All right, everybody, welcome back to Poquito podcast. I'm Dominic Angel. The boys are back in town. We're on a good streak, fellas. We just wrapped up our conversation. It was a good one. We talked about what does independence and freedom mean to us. What is our individual responsibility as citizens of this country, as people of color, you know. Josh and I debate a lot, and we hope you find it very interesting. I think it's going to be a great episode. Appreciate everybody hanging out. Before we get into the episode, we want to remind you that we have a Patreon. If you'd like to support us online, you can sign up below. We got tons of great content coming in. I don't know if you guys noticed, but we were a little sneaky. We went from episode 68 to episode 70 in our public listings. That's because our 69th episode was a little saucy. That was released on our Patreon episode last week. We have tons of great content there. We're also starting a pilot season happening soon where we're going to try we have all these great ideas for new shows and new stuff that we want to put out, and it's all going onto the Patreon. We're going to be releasing stuff every week, hopefully multiple times a week if we can get to it. No promises. We have working lives and we're trying to do the best that we can, but you know, any contributions on our Patreon really helps us out and to be able to continue to put out the podcast in the best ways possible and to put out more content. So we want to appreciate and say thank you to everybody that's been there and that supports us there. And if you'd like to join us, all of that's in the description. If you want to join us on Discord, it's a party, guys. We're all there. There's a lot of people making friends on there. People are recommending music, TV shows, other podcasts. It's a cool, fun time. I really enjoy the community that's there. It's free to join. All of that stuff is in the description. And make sure you like, comment, and subscribe if you're watching us on YouTube. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, leave us a review. You know, give us whatever rating you want. It just helps us in the numbers, helps boost us, helps us continue to be seen by more and more people. Share our clips online, send them to your friends, send them to your spouses, to your mother-in-law, whoever. Thanks everybody for being here. Hope you enjoy the episode. Don't fly. Poquito, Poquito, Poquito podcast. Poquito, Poquito, Poquito podcast. Poquito, Poquito, Poquito. Did you guys celebrate 4th of July this year?
I did by myself watching movies.
I wouldn't call that celebrating. That just sounds like a Thursday night for you.
Yeah.
That was two on the nose there, huh? I mean, if celebrating is taking multiple naps and then playing video games real late, then probably not.
It's American dream, dude.
Yeah.
Can you really not celebrate the 4th of July, being that it's about freedom?
To do whatever you want?
I think we're hitting on something.
There's a major eye roll happening.
Yeah. Which is crazy because his eyes are shaped weird.
Yeah. There's a joke there. There's a joke there for sure. My eyeballs are football shaped. I'm a real patriot. I have Patriot
vision?
Patriot vision.
It's like, that's why he's so blind. That's Homelander's laser vision.
It's always a weird thing with the 4th of July. Like, I feel like for me, it's over the last like 10 years. Is that right? Yeah, about 10 years is like when I started to like associate a lot less with like being American. And I know even today, like just my American identity goes back and forth because I have to, on one hand, I do have to accept that I have an American experience. I am an American. My culture is American. You know, I can't get around that. If I go to any other country, it's like I'm very clearly an American. I have sensibilities, you know. But on the other hand, it's just like there was at a certain point, like learning or kind of having that realization of like American history is not really my history.
Honestly, I think that holding on to your roots and your heritage and finding your place in America amongst all of these other people is the American experience. Like, that's what it is. The only thing is that the reason that we don't think that is because there's a lot of white people and they already had that They already found that. And so they're just born into it. And they're like, everyone's like me. I get it.
That's what I'm saying. But that's the thing is like we're doing that against the country that is telling me that I'm part of its story, right? Like, and I am part. That's all a dumb metaphor, but
no, it's not. All of the great people in our history have had that experience. All the people we look up to are fighting and trying to hold on to what they bring and not get lost in this country that tries to combat it. It's very aggressive country we have historically.
Yeah, the culture of the country is to
fight.
But it's not even just about the fight. It literally is superiority. It's elitism. It's
I've always been above elitism.
Shut the fuck up. I don't know. It's being brought up within. Maybe you see it differently, Josh. But for me, it's like growing up and being taught American history and being taught that like it's part of my history. At a certain point, you realize it's really not the case. Like if this was 50 years ago, the American government, American culture is actively anti-Mexican, anti-Chicano, anti-Latin, anti-immigrant, anti-people of color, even now. And like there's still a lot of stuff where like white supremacists get away with a shit ton of stuff. They fucking stormed the Capitol.
I need to make an actual tinfoil hat for when I say the things I'm about to say. I wish I had something to do it with, but the government over the since that period of time you've been talking about, like around the 40s and 50s really,
right?
They worked really hard to align the government and America. So like when we think of America, we think about it as the military government, when that's not what it is. It's a country of communities of people, and the government is by those people. That's what I'm saying. They've worked really hard on making it aligned as one thing when it's not really. This is our country.
I understand what you're saying.
This is my home.
Yeah, the government's happening in it.
I agree with that, but I'm talking about American culture as a whole is still like, it's still white.
I understand what you're saying.
Like if you were to go out into the world and ask people like to describe an American or what American culture is, it'd be a bunch of white shit.
Of course, I understand. That's what I'm saying. I understand what you're saying, but most people are idiots. No, I'm just joking. What's that George Carlin saying? He's a white guy. George Carlin saying, or he's like, the average, think about how stupid the average person is and realize half the people are stupider than that.
Yeah.
That's funny.
The average person's white and the average person's whiter than that.
Half the people are whiter than that average white guy. Holy shit, you're right.
There's a bit there.
It's a George Carlin bit.
I'm stealing material right now.
The American government was funded on a concept that it didn't offer to everybody. There's not room for black people or indigenous people or non-white people in the American dream. And it's used, that's the thing, that's what I really don't like, is that the American dream is used against non-white people to say, like, if you just work hard, like that's the American dream.
Right.
You can hustle and
but
have
that is
greatness.
My father always used to say. He used to say, they don't promise you happiness, they promise you the pursuit of happiness. Right. That's what we're after, the pursuit. It's a carrot on the end of a stick. It's like that for everyone though. White people are also running on a treadmill. They're just more of them so they feel comfortable.
Yeah, but what you're saying is like it's more likely that they're afforded that happiness than everyone else.
Here's the problem though, right? So what Ricky was saying, sorry, I kind of jumped in there, but the thing is that we're getting into a conversation about class mobility right now. Yeah.
You're right.
There's so many different facets of American culture that we could dive into, but just to speak on this, is that per capita, non-white demographics outside of like East Asian or even just Asian in general, I think like in general, on average, Asian people are more wealthy
Successful.
than per capita than like white Americans, right? But for most, Black people, Indigenous people, Latinos, Middle Eastern people, per capita, we're much poorer. We're much more poor than the white American, right?
Right. And more densely concentrated.
And more densely concentrated, yes. So this whole American dream thing, that when I say it's weaponized against us, is to say like, oh, see, like, it's because your people are lazy, your people aren't hardworking, and all you got to do is act right.
Yeah.
And that's where jumping into a totally different thing is like the whole like Latinos for Trump, like Latino Republicans. So specifically brown Latino Republicans is always bewilders me, because to me it's a sense of like, oh, we get here. The American dream is so weaponized against the people that it's like, if you just act right, that's when you get people saying like they're making like all of those criminals are making us look bad. It's like, they're not making us look bad. They're making themselves look bad. They're criminals. They don't represent us.
But if you view,
But why are you lumping all of us together like that?
That's kind of how I was literally just about to say that about like Latinos for Trump. I was like, we're not a monolith. Like, that's what makes this so great.
That's fine and that's fair, but
I get they're wrong. That's fine.
But I
wrong.
mean the it's when it becomes, there's being conservative and then there's being conservative in the face of your community, right? So it's like it's turncoat, right? It's I don't know if I use that term correctly, but it's like you're turning your back on your community actively. Like, and that's the thing is, I'm not saying that inherently you're bad for being a Latino Republican. That's a whole other conversation. But what I'm saying is, from what I have seen, when there's Latino Republicans, they are Republican in the face of the rest of the community. Like, they're turning back and pointing and saying, you guys are doing it bad. You're making us look bad.
Right.
If you act right, we'll be treated with respect.
And like, I can understand somebody taking that perspective if they come from a certain environment and they're like, I understand that being a reaction of people. Like, I know people who are from, I'm from a place where people were not good, and I could look around. I wasn't allowed to play in the park because there was junkies and shit in there. You know what I mean? And I could imagine somebody there, but for the grace of God goes I, or whatever, looking out at that and turning that to accusation and being like, this is your fault. To people who have that lifestyle, or you know what I mean, or I'm trying to be a little vague here.
I mean, yeah, I think everybody has a choice, right? But it's describing the only way out is to to comply. Like, I think
it's subservience.
Yeah, it's subservience because
yeah, there's
a way out, right? And I work in manufacturing, so I see a lot of this. Like, without a proper education, if you work in manufacturing and if you do it carefully, you can make decent money.
Right.
But the amount of time and energy and sometimes just the wear on your body you have to give for less money is a very real thing. And some of I've heard people be like, oh, I think people should just be more grateful for being in America. It's like, and at times it's hard not to be, because I just have to listen to my mom's stories, my parents' stories about what they went through. And I'm like, oh yeah, I am grateful. But on the other hand, what they went through when they got here is also like, I have to keep in mind what can happen if I don't protect myself.
Facts.
Because they also got taken advantage of. They got more here and got taken advantage of more.
The thing about that though is that like when people talk about like, oh, like, why don't you say that in a different country, or why don't you go to Mexico and try that, or like see how hard it really is, when it's like, I know that this feels like a cop-out answer to a lot of people, but American history, world history is like fucking up Latin America.
Yeah, go read Open Veins of Latin America one time, and tell me that doesn't change your mind.
Yeah. It was a matter of not a public policy. It was a matter of American policy to keep Latin America
under their sphere of
yeah.
Look into the Monroe Doctrine. That's like one facet of what happened in Latin America.
Right, right.
And they went in and fucked up a bunch of countries. They turned countries communist.
Right.
Yeah, I mean that's where the term banana republic comes from.
Mm-hmm. I guess I don't understand why bring that up?
Because I'll say why I thought of it was that Ricky's talking about how like people will often say like we should be grateful for being in America and having these freedoms, right? And like I remember, was it 2021 or 22 when Cuba was rebelling against its government, and a bunch of people, particularly Republican Latinos, were like, see, like communism is bad. The people don't want it. They're rebelling against the government. Look at have a dictatorship and all that stuff. And I was just like, it's more nuanced than that.
Yeah.
Right.
It's also a dumb take. Like, this country's founded on rebellion, so
yeah.
But it's also even if it's a dumb take, it's a popular take.
Right, 100%. But I mean,
well, my thing is just like we're so detached from that history, so it's hard. It's if you don't know what we're talking about, you know, if you don't remember, I think it was 2021 when the Cuban people like performed a coup against the government, and like I get it. There's a lot of Cuban Americans that I know that were like speaking out in support of the rebellion, and they were like, yeah, like the communists kicked out my family and all this stuff. And there's a lot of history there, and there's a lot of personal history there for people, and like people were, you know, kicked. It's hard to get into that history in and of itself, but just to jump to the end of it, what was actually happening at the time. I was saying there's two things that you need to take into consideration, is that when you talk about all of the stuff that was happening in Cuba that led to that, all of that stuff happens in the United States. Censorship, police discrimination, military discrimination, all of the stuff that they talk about happens, and it might be in different forms, and it might feel like we have more freedoms to speak out in the United States. But there's a limit for sure. You can't, like, for some people, when we talk about January 6th and the people that literally took over the U.S. Capitol versus people protesting in the streets, smashing storefront windows, you know, locking up hundreds of people on the street for protesting against our government. It's the same crime, and one of them literally stormed a government building. And like a lot of those cases, it was just announced recently. It was like a lot of those cases are being acquitted. Like they are not acquitted, but they're like,
really? They're
closing the cases. A lot of the people that were once found guilty were like, I forgot what the actual term is. I'm sorry for not remembering these facts, but it was something, they were being overturned or they were being dismissed because either a lack of information, a lack of evidence, or something like that. So all of these people get to like have their big show and do that. But, you know, freedom's for some, but not for everybody, right?
Right.
And the other thing is that when we talk about Cuba and it overthrowing its own government, is like, I don't care if a country is communist or capitalist or whatever. If that's what the people want, like that's what it should be, right?
Yeah. That's what I always say. Can we just agree? I don't care what way it is, just agree.
Yeah. So it's like if the government, if the people are unsatisfied with their government, then I don't care what virtues the political parties espouse. That's nice. What?
I was just saying, nice sentence.
It doesn't matter. Like I know that the stuff that I speak about, I'm like the way that my politics align tends to be more left leaning. You know, people have called me communist.
You?
Yeah. So but then they'll like look at Cuba and be like, look, communism is bad. And I'm like, no, it's like, it's about what the people want, not about who's in charge.
Right.
Yeah, I feel like, I don't know, because like the older I got, like I feel like my family for a while did celebrate it. It was mostly cooking and fireworks, but as I got older, it did feel like weird, like to like hold these conflicting things in my head. Because like speaking on the Latino for Trump stuff, like, you know, we're not a monolith. People can have different points of view, but it's just like if you look at the history, it's like repatriation isn't that crazy to happen again. Like, I know it's still pretty like extreme thing, like Mexican repatriation, like that's happened before, and this energy is kind of leading. I'm not saying it's imminent or whatever, but it's like things like that are in my head of like things shift, and the people that would do it are the people you're voting for if you're Latinos for Trump.
What's repatriate? I don't know what that means.
Mexican repatriation, I think it happened in like 1910, 1920, where they rounded up Mexicans, Latinos in general, and were shipping them back to Mexico, even if some of them were citizens and still got shipped back to Mexico. A mass roundup and deportation.
Yeah, that's the thing about, you know, we always think we're living in modern times and that we couldn't possibly do something, but like, you know, Roe v. Wade got overturned.
Yeah. And it's these things where like I'm not trying to like, I mean, this is why we're talking about it here, right? But it's like, I hear these conversations a lot and I kind of say some stuff with people, but even when I do bring that stuff up with other people, they just don't even retain it. They're like, nah, it would never happen. But like you're saying, a lot of this stuff is being overturned.
And the thing is that there are current senators that speak about stuff like this, that's a goal of theirs.
Yes, they're saying it out loud now.
Yeah.
Like 10 years ago, they were lying about it.
Yeah.
So this is why I'm pro guns.
and
That's
ironic,
what they're for. That's what our Second Amendment's for.
and I do agree with that, honestly.
It's for fighting the government.
Yeah, but that's the thing is like, I don't
think we're held to the same standard with gun ownership.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's real. Like,
Say that to my Smith and Wesson. No, I'm just joking.
well, I mean,
I don't have a
it's
Smith
it's
and
a
Wesson,
real
it's just
it's
a
a
joke.
real thing. There's like black and brown gun holders, like gun owners that will walk around with their stuff and get the cops called on them, and then get arrested for having a weapon in public when they're just utilizing their
Yeah, good.
you know, their rights as a citizen, and then the NRA doesn't help them out.
Yeah, it reminded me of this YouTuber who makes videos. I don't remember what the entire point of his page is, but something that he often posts is getting pulled over in different states because he holds a firearm license. And he has this whole like system of procedure to prevent any like misunderstanding. And at first you think that this is someone who's trying to show people like how to do it right, but it could just be how I interpret it. The more you watch it, the more you realize like, no, he's trying to point out that it's different for him because he's black. Like he wears his, whenever he's driving, he wears his license and his registration on a laminate around his neck so that he can show them. And then he informs them and he flips it over and he has his carrying card and then he tells them that it's in the glove compartment. And it's this whole thing of like letting them know that yes, but he's doing it legally, as legally as possible. It always leads to an amicable like release. But I think that like that was the surprising thing is at first you think that he's trying to be like, well, this is how you're supposed to do it. But then you realize like, no, he has to do this every single time. And if it were someone white, they would just trust them to like, they probably wouldn't even ask them.
Like, you have a picture of it on your phone?
Yeah. like that's something that's also still a constant, you know, when people are talking about what privilege looks like and everything is like being able, just having like the actual like situational freedom to like be comfortable. You know what I mean? Like having a white person could more often reach for their glove box without saying anything than a person of color, if that makes sense.
I understand. I guess I don't know. I guess I'm wrong. I'm not wrong, but I chalk stuff up to the individual most of the time. Whenever someone's racist towards me, I'm always like, oh, this guy's an idiot. I'm never like, society made you this way, because that gets into like tinfoil hat area to me. But obviously, I know that there's historical context that's why I said I'm wrong about it. But I just still like, I don't know. There's like this thing in me where I guess I'm just like ignorant or oblivious or some shit. I don't know the word, but I'm like, well, I'm good, so you're good, kind of a thing. And it's happened to me before, like where I've gotten like taken advantage of, or people have treated me with malice, and I was just being ignorant, or I was just floating along, being like everything's happy. So
I mean, I think that's a easier way to survive things.
Ignorance is bliss.
Like in a way, like you don't have to. You're not focused on it because it's like, I don't know, like when you.
No, it's bad. It's not good. It's not good to just ignore a bunch of things stacking up. You know what I mean?
I think that's what I was going to say was oftentimes like you could just I think that what becomes an issue when people chalk things up to like the individual, and it's not necessarily that you have to like every single time always be on it, you know what I mean, like police yourself and police others. That's not what I'm trying to say, but I am trying to say that like the more you try to justify dealing with it or letting it slide that time, the more it this comes up a lot when I talk about the bad apple comparison when we talk about police, where people try to make the argument like, well, these are individuals doing bad work. He's like, yeah, but the two things you're not acknowledging are A, it keeps happening, and B, they're not fully seeing the repercussions for that, and people keep trying to defend them as if they're not. You know, people are trying to defend some of the bad apples as if they're not bad apples, and because of that, the rate grows, the consistency grows, and the environment in which that's accepted grows. Yeah. And it's like before you realize, even because a lot of people usually will make that argument when they know somebody like in their family that's a police officer. It's like, I understand that from your perspective. Well, he's not like that. Yeah. But like, who does he work with? What is he surrounded by constantly? How do you know that for sure? It's like, not to say that I want you to look at your relative as a bad person, but it's like you can't ignore that it is happening and that the people that are perpetrating it are to a degree getting away with it. And no one's doing anything to change those people. Those people keep their jobs, they keep going, and then they go up in the ranks. Now those people are in charge of other people, and it turns into a flowing thing where like now they're going to only look for people that think like that, or at least let them get away with it. I remember like 3 different people from high school who wanted to join the police force in our hometown and specifically chose not to after they passed the written exam, but when they showed up for the in-person interview, they didn't like the questions that were being asked because they felt like they were being targeted towards looking for a particular type of personality and belief system. And it made them comfortable, and they chose not to pursue that.
Yeah, there's a lot of weird stuff with the police hiring process.
I mean, it's just so hard. I think when it comes to the 4th of July, it's easy to want to celebrate the concept of freedom, or even just spend time with family. Fireworks are fun, and all that stuff. It's also just hard to not think about like the deep history of discrimination this country has.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is that like you shouldn't just focus on that kind of thing on this one day. Like, it's an ongoing issue. It's not just this one day. This day happened fucking 500 years ago or some shit. I don't know. I'm bad at math. What's it, 1772?
Yeah, at least 12 years.
At least. At the very minimum. But it is okay for you to hang out and chill on this one day, I think. You know what I mean? But it's a persisting issue. But you don't always get to hang out with your weird uncle.
The people that like protest the day, I don't think they're necessarily protesting the tradition, and that's often why, like, when I talk to other people about it, I ask them, I was like, well, do you celebrate the day, or do you just engage in the tradition? Because I do think that there's like, for me,
that's what I'm saying.
4th of July and Thanksgiving are 2 days specifically I think if you just renamed them and repurpose them, you could still have the exact same sentiment, but just not actively celebrate something that people are still affected by.
I mean, that is what Thanksgiving is. Like, it is renamed to something that we're just...
That's what they did. Right, number one is they renamed it.
Yeah, the first thing they did is rename it.
Thanksgiving is a little bit different. I mean, I understand, but the whole thing, Independence Day and Thanksgiving, are all closely tied to like the history of the country, the founding of the country.
Yeah.
And like this, that gets into a debate about whether or not this country has a right to exist.
Right.
What?
I've never heard that before.
What?
Whether or not this country has the right to
Well,
exist.
it's the whole stolen land thing.
Yeah, stolen land. The land back movement is like, this is colonized land. This is a colonizer. These are, it's a settlement.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to happen.
America's a settlement?
Yeah.
I mean, settler colonial, like, it's very well documented.
Right.
See,
Settler
no.
colonialism.
Yeah. I feel like we've moved past that a bit over the last like 400 years.
No, it's coming back. in
The
pod form.
settlementness?
No, land back.
Calling it a settlement, but that's the thing. Again, this is the whole. The history is written by the victor, right? So like,
Yeah.
but there's plenty of people. There's a movie. This is when I talk about separating yourself from the American government and American history, because in reality, this country wasn't. This country was meant for white people. Up until very recently, and even now, it's arguable that it's like that there's a lot more people trying to maintain white culture.
I can agree with that. I can also agree that there was a long period of time where white people were making decisions for white people.
Well, I mean,
But this country was meant for white people.
Yeah, it
I'm
literally.
not allowed to talk about why I don't believe in that.
You couldn't
But I don't
vote
believe in
if you
that.
weren't a white landowner.
Sure.
That country was meant for white people, and like just in that alone.
I don't know. I'm a hippie. So when I look out on the land and I look at the mountains and I look at the places and the people, I don't see government.
They carved their faces into a mountain.
I understand. That happened hundreds of years after them, though.
But you understand what I'm saying? This country is meant for white people.
Okay. That's what white people would want you to believe.
Yeah, that's
This country was meant for the land itself. Our people were here.
I think
And before
that
then, there was nothing, just animals.
there's a
Fire burned for 1,000 years.
No. You're
talking about bureaucracy and the government and shit.
I feel like that's more of
this country was founded on the basis of that it was meant for white people. That's manifest destiny. Literally, white Americans
you never
from
seen that? You never seen that picture
coast
of that
to
white
coast.
angel? And like, go that way.
I guess to me, it's just kind of a thing. It's like, I don't know, my parents meant for me to be more successful. But I do what I want.
That's a false equivalency.
Okay. I understand what you're saying. Like, but I don't know. I just don't feel that way anymore.
I mean, that's fine for you.
Yeah. I don't know.
But to say that that's not what's happening, that we like, if I were to pull out the news, and I wouldn't find like very popular senators, very popular representatives running for public office that are expressly racist.
Right. No, I understand that.
a few years ago. Around the time of the census, there was literally stated that the whole push on the conservative side to fight against Roe v. Wade was because Caucasian numbers in America were dwindling.
Yeah. I mean, like, because like, there's a. I think there's a way where patriotism isn't inherently bad, where like this is like you're saying, like this is all our country, but what's I don't know if you alluded to it before on here is that they blurred the line between what is the country and what is the government.
For sure.
Of what the country stood for and what the government is doing. And there's literally senators and representatives calling for a Christo nationalist state, an ethno state ruling.
I guess here's my issue with this mentality, and this is To me, it sounds defenseless. It sounds like you're saying there's more white people than us. This place is made for white people. It's run by white people. White people are in power. They have all the money. We can't do anything except for fight in the streets. And even when we do that, they arrest us unfairly, jail us, and kill us against our will. Ship us back to other countries that are poor that they destroyed because they run the world. And that sounds to me like you can't do anything.
I think it's important to be able to identify what's happening.
So to me, the only solution to that is to have sex and have as many Mexican babies or as many brown babies as you can to try and outnumber them so that we become the majority, and we can control the things and ruin their
The thing is, but I wish I could
With
remember
love.
the name of the person. It was either a reverend or a Black Panther member, but he was giving a speech. I just saw this week. I wish I could remember his name. But he was saying, it's like, you don't fight for the rights of people today. You're fighting for progress that is for generations to come. Stuff that you'll never see. Stuff that people in generations that will never meet you will thank you for.
What's that quote? The world will only be better when someone plants a tree with shade they'll never enjoy. It's that type of quote.
That's the idea.
I tried to look up who it was, but it says it was by Darren Shan, the author who wrote fucking the Vampire's Assistant. That sounds like
I don't know. I wish I could find it.
Yeah. I tried to quick
But he's
Google
saying
search
like
it.
the things that you're fighting for are for generations to come, and
I understand that. I understand that.
Because
but I mean the thing it's funny because it's like all the stuff that you just said is true. All the stuff that you just said about how like there's a country meant for white people, it's working against us. This is a constant fight. They're the ones that are in power. All we have is to be able to fight in the streets, and they arrest us for doing so.
Mm-hmm.
All of that stuff is real. It's not like you said anything that was untrue.
I understand that.
Well,
I just don't
if
see
I can
the-
add
you sh-
something.
I don't see the light at the end of the tunnel with that though.
I feel like what's being misconstrued is like the mentality isn't to use that as it's not my fault, it's their fault. I think the mentality is this is what we're actively fighting against, and this is why we talk about it. Like if we don't talk about it, then people ignore it, and then it persists as a problem.
Right.
and that's how we end up here.
In this air conditioned room.
Also, these are the things that you're enjoying your life in the face of.
Yeah, that's what I was just about to say. The thing for me is that these things get very heavy, and like it's a lot for you to take on as an individual, and like when we don't have the mechanisms to fight against these things, you end up just burdening yourself with all of this, inundating yourself with all of this. And then it colors the way you look at society. It colors the way you look at individuals. When most individuals are like us, they don't operate in these grandiose, large picture things. Well, I mean, I guess not like us. Most people are like, I would assume a lot of people are like me, where they're not taking on the concerns of the government, and they're living their individual lives, and that's why I like that Eastern shit that's like centering yourself, and they're like, this is happening now right here. We're in this air conditioned room right now. This is good.
I think
We're expressing ourselves.
I think
but
you're
that's
right
not-
that a lot of people are like that. And I think that is an essential tool to survive things, even if they get worse, because you have to be willing to endure and survive and find joy, even when things get hard, right?
How are you supposed to strike that balance? Like, how am I supposed to enjoy my food when there's war and kids dying?
You learn to do what everyone else around the world's been doing.
But
You
isn't
do-
that not being true
So there's
to what you're believing in?
No, what
No,
I'm saying
there's-
is those are concurrent with the fight.
Yeah, and not to get too melodramatic, but that's the burden. Like that's the great tragedy is that you have a life to live and you have a life to enjoy in the face of so much suffering. And the thing is like how do I say this? Ramdas has a teaching where he talks about living with death on your left shoulder, right? And it's just meant to remind yourself that everything is temporary and that live your life knowing that it's going to end someday? How do you live your life knowing that you're going to die, right? And so taking every moment you can, and part of that, and he has other stuff on that, but that one jumped into my brain of like, yeah, you live with knowing that these things are happening in the world, and you take moments to acknowledge and to respect that, and you also take moments in your life, whether it's a few minutes, it's a day, it's a donation, it's an afternoon to volunteer, it's finding ways to spread awareness. There's so many things that you can do to help, and it's hard for you, like you said, to take on the world and to take on that burden of yourself. But there's things that you can do within that. You find community with other people. You help spread awareness. It's even in little things like not to. There's ways that it's about intention, right? It's living with intention. And there's ways that I can look at you, Josh, and see that you were doing a lot of that already, and it's coming from you. You know, it's small examples of like...
I was going to say this, like, but to me, this is the now. I'm not going to go fight or to become a doctor in another country. Like, I'm not going to war to try and settle any disputes. I'm not doing that. I'm cleaning up my yard. I help my friends. There's a quote from Community, and it has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but it's important to me. And he's like, our ears can only hear so far because that's the people around us that we care about.
Right.
And like, we can only see so far, and that goes doubly for you.
Halfly.
Halfly, and all right.
Yeah.
No, and I think that's true. Like the people who are in our community, like, we need to help them. And by tending your garden, if we all picked up the trash around us, the world would become a cleaner place, kind of a mentality of like, that's why I'm willing to do those things that we're about to list off. Go ahead.
He's like,
But
name all the reasons I'm a friend.
Name 10 reasons that I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I mean, in reality, like, I talk a lot of shit about, I give Josh a lot of shit, but it's like, you are a selfless person. And you do help your friends. You give them rides. You pay for meals.
Yeah.
You know, you listen to people. You know, you're there for your friends in a lot of major ways. And that's part of it, for sure. But there's ways that, like, you have to understand. I don't like saying that phrase. You have to understand, because I'm not trying to be. Yeah, exactly. I'm not trying to be like intellectually superior.
No, I'm just joking.
But what I think should be something that people carry with them is that, like, there's a lot of stuff that we participate in that actively hurts other communities across the world that we don't know about, right? Buying an iPhone, using gasoline, polluting the atmosphere.
Right.
That stuff affects other countries and other communities across the world that have nothing to do with us. Mm-hmm. So in that way, if you can participate in that way, then you can participate the other way, where you can help out other communities. You can donate your time, you could donate your resources, you could donate awareness, and become part of a world community. Because the people that are in other parts of the world have the same wants and needs that we do.
I understand that, and that's a good point.
Because like, even you being a good friend helped, like, because this is what you're good at, where your sphere of influence is. Like, say you're tied to someone that has a longer vision and a specific vision somewhere else. You being a good friend to them helps them sustain, you know, whatever endeavors they have.
Right. No, I understand, and that's what my whole thing is. That's what I try and do. I believe in community, and I believe in helping the people around you, and I think it's important because we're a pot of flowers, and we all grow together. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think what I'm saying is you just extend that a little bit further.
No, I think you're right. I think you're right. I don't disagree with you. I do think it's hard because I don't trust large government bodies. So, like, donating money to government bodies to try and help the countries that they fucking destroyed, to me, is a little...
Well, you don't have to donate to a government body.
That's why I didn't bring it up when you were saying it, but that's a kind of like a thing for me. Like, you know, they find out shit about, like, the Red Cross, and, like, you think you've been helping, but really you've been helping make things worse.
Right. But there's also something to what you're saying that I can, like, push back against a little bit, is you're saying, like, the mentality... You're kind of fulfilling what you're saying about, like... it's too big of a problem. We can't do anything about it. So let me not think about it and let me just focus on this. But it's no, you should think about these things.
I do. It's not that I'm like completely like don't think about other countries. Like that's not in my nature. You know what I mean? Like I want other people to do great too. You know what I mean? Just not as great as the greatest country on earth. No, I'm just joking. I'm sorry. I'm just kidding.
I there's a lot of stuff, and that's the thing about living in a place where, like, yeah, in many ways we do have a lot of more or different freedoms than other countries have, right? So, but because of that, that doesn't mean that we're not allowed the space to be like, yo, we need to fix this shit, and that we should just be grateful for what we get.
I know I'm combative when it comes to the idea of government and big government stuff, but it is a tool. It's just a very large concept tool. And even though it's in the control by people who are bad, it can be used for good. And we can help the world in the same way that we destroy it. We can do better. You know what I mean?
I do agree with that.
We're still new. This is still kind of early as far as countries go. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like we have a long way to go still. We're barely we're not even really out of the dirt yet.
We're not even out of the teenage years as far as the country goes.
I mean, yeah,
this
probably.
When you talk about
what's dog years or what's country years for?
I don't know. Some countries have been around for 2,000 years or more.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing is like when I'd say that this country wasn't built for me, I don't think it was. I fully believe that it wasn't, that I was not in mind. Some fucking Mexican kid in Los Angeles was not in George Washington's mind when he fucking fought against England.
I think it's probably only like syphilis or something. Knowing those fucking guys.
I mean, the Whigs, yeah.
But, when we talk about this is our home and this is our country, and so it's oddly enough, it's funny because the people are like, these people are taking over the country. It's like, yeah, well, this is our home. Like,
yeah,
this is all I know.
I live here.
But the whole concept of fighting for a spot at the table.
Yeah.
Right. So like we have a right to be here and we have a right to participate in a society that we want to build. And so in that sense, in that of like being American, that's the thing is like American culture for non-white Americans is actively fighting against white American culture.
It's kind of funny, to keep it in that table metaphor, like this is kind of a dysfunctional family. And it's like we have shit parents. And we're being like, respect me. I'm a person.
Yeah.
And like we've been eating on the stairs this whole time.
Yeah, I mean, not exactly that same sentiment, but I've often, like, when people bring up the table analogy, I've often said, like, nobody's asking white people to give up their seat. They're just asking them to make room for another chair.
Yeah, there's a lot of space between the current chairs.
Yeah, like, for the longest time, they've had the whole table to themselves because they forced it.
And then we're in
way.
the back of the backyard eating.
It was somebody else's table. They just sat down and were like, all right, I'm eating here now.
And we made the table.
We made the table.
All right, we're done with this metaphor, right?
I don't know. I got some Animal Farm jokes in me.
Fuck, I was trying to make a cold food reference.
Whenever Independence Day rolls around, it's always like, it's hard because you don't want to celebrate, but how do you participate in this? Because it really is, I don't know, it sounds so stupid, but it's almost like you really should take the day to reflect on what independence and freedom and like the people that have fought for us. Because like when we talk about fighting for our rights, it's like the civil rights movement. Without that, like we wouldn't have the Chicano movement.
That's kind of what I'm saying. Like it's not. It is a holiday commemorating July 2nd, the actual Independence Day.
Right. But they had to buy the fireworks.
But
they had to go to Mexico. It's a whole thing.
Yeah. Sneak it across the border. Isn't that funny how many people sneak fireworks across the borders? All right. Anyway. Even though 4th of July is based on Independence Day, the historical American situation that happened.
The situation.
It's about American independence and our freedom, which we've had to fight for over the years. but we have it right now. Kinda. Me and you? Well, that's what I'm saying. What do you...
But the other thing is that,
All right.
again...
you made me feel weird when you made that face.
I get
Was
it.
I saying something wrong?
I mean, it's debatable, right?
Is it?
Yeah.
Everything's
Like, you're being like,
This
we're
is-
not free?
This is whole episode.
Right.
This is what I'm saying. I think you're thinking of something different than I am. Like, what are you talking about? Like debt?
Debt.
Financial debt or something? Like they got us in
The other thing
mental
is-
shackles.
the other thing
there
is
was
you have-
slaves.
I get it. But you have to think outside of yourself as well as, like, yes, you know, I don't have the same kind of difficulties that other people in this country do. That other people, like, I have citizenship. I don't have to worry about, you know, immigration like a lot of people in my community do. Yeah, I don't worry about police discrimination as much as other people do, although I've had it. You know, it comes up a lot less than other people that I know, or that, you know.
I understand.
But that doesn't mean you can't go off of just your own experience, right? You go off of you go off of what historically a community has faced in general. And there's good ways to show, you know, if culture is shifting, and there definitely are things that start to shift, but it's like it's the thing is like you have to be vigilant. Like you can't just let up because things are improving. You can't fucking rest on your laurels because, you know, we have it better than people did 50 years ago, because there's a lot of stuff that we have now that I'm like, I'm not saying you're saying this, but like when people compare the United States to Mexico, they're like, oh, at least we can like speak out against the government. One, it's like, can we really, you know? But the other thing is that we shouldn't pat this country on the back for a bare minimum, for like what we should have a right to, like, you know what I mean? For an inherent human right, we shouldn't pat a government on the back for passing gay marriage bills.
I don't know if we're patting the government on the back for anything. Government doesn't have a back.
Yeah,
was built on backs.
It has no spine. I'm kidding.
Yeah. I don't think I don't know. It's confusing. That's the thing about this kind of stuff, is it's very theory based.
But
Like the government is a series of processes that are happening. You know what I mean? Like it's not like an actual machine, even though they call it a machine.
it is. Some of it's kind of abstract and bureaucratic, but you just look at what just some of the changes just happened. They're literally starting to criminalize homelessness.
Like it's still
understand.
processes happening in sequence with intent.
Yeah.
Like they're not just a bunch of random people doing random things that don't connect. It's all one system.
Right, but embodying it as a persona is where I get like.
I mean,
I'm
but
like,
that might just be taking it too literally.
That might be your autism flaring up.
Damn.
No, I mean.
What do you mean?
I just feel like it gets treated as an entity when it's not that. It's a bunch of separate things happening that seem like
Three
one
entities that work together.
The claw.
Branches.
thing. I know, but most of the people in those branches don't even agree on things. They just put things in motion.
I'm not saying
And
that
get
there's an
voted on.
Illuminati, but there is definitely a very public push for rights to be stripped.
We're
and
not even
for
talking about we shouldn't be talking about this. I agree that things are bad, but like you were saying a second ago, you asked like, how are you supposed to? I don't know. I think it's okay to take it easy every now and then. We've had this conversation though, so this is kind of redundant.
I mean, I just want to point out, or like kind of touch on what I think you were saying earlier just now. It's like, I don't care if, I'm not saying we put a face on a beast, like and give it a name and say like it's an entity. It's something that's happening.
What
and
is-
like there's white supremacy, there's how do I say it?
And racism is white supremacy.
Yeah.
Because to me, racism is like a mental affliction. I think there's something wrong with somebody who's racist.
And to kind of chalk it up to be like, oh, there's something medically wrong with somebody, I think is diminishing like the real realities of what's happening.
I know. That's why that part's cut. You can't demonize people for that kind of thing. I can't be like,
I'm not demonizing.
No. I'm saying I said that. I was like, oh, they're obviously sick in the head because of their thoughts. Like, that's a slippery slope.
Right.
Yeah. You can't do that.
Yeah.
I was just making an offhanded joke because I think racist people are
Well,
stupid.
well, I've tried to make the joke.
Racism is stupid.
Yeah,
For sure.
racism is like
It's not though. It's pretty thorough and fucking. There's a lot of stupid that can't make systems and governments.
not all racists are stupid.
No. That's what I'm saying. It's a
But
very smart
racism
system,
is
actually.
stupid.
Yeah, racism is a shallow.
It's like when you see those shirts that say "fuck cancer" on them. It's like,
duh.
yeah, duh.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Nobody's like saying "hell yeah, cancer."
Hell yeah.
I was like,
Cancer.
actually, have we listened to Cancer's point?
But that's my thing about cancer too. It's a bad thing. We all know it's bad, but we're calling a bunch of different things one thing. When it's really a bunch of different systems that are bad that all get labeled under one thing, and we're being like, this is bad cancer.
It is though.
Yeah, of course it is. But cancer manifests in a bunch of different ways, and some things that are cancer now aren't cancer later. They're something else.
Yeah, it just depends how useful it is to white supremacy. If this is the analogy we're maintaining,
White cells. We're all cells. That's a callback.
The thing is that white supremacy as a system manifests itself in different ways. That's true.
I guess I just don't. To me, I don't think white people are superior. So I don't believe in white supremacy. So I'm like, that's fake, guys.
You're getting into semantics,
Yeah.
and you're talking about what words mean, and we're talking about what a system is.
I understand.
it's like it's like we're talking about the Windows operating system. We're like, look, these are all computers, bro. Sorry.
No, I was just trying to. I don't want to.
Sorry.
I don't want. No, don't. You're not. I'm not even. You're not doing anything wrong. I'm just trying to not make everyone hate me and seem like an idiot because I don't really know how to like word what I'm saying besides being like a hippie and being like, we're all people, man, and these people are just confused and lost.
But I think
But there's a lot of them, and some of them are in charge.
But I think you're right. Like, ultimately, this is what people want to be, right? You're saying, like, the average person was like, why aren't we just, like, cool with each other? Like, why aren't we just having a good time and focusing on making things better?
Difference creates dispute. I learned that in SLC Punk. That's a true fact, though. That's a true fact of life. Fucking anytime you get a difference in people, they battle each other. So to me, like, yeah, I understand it's institutionalized, which I have a hard time with. To me, if these things were real, actual, implemented, systematic things, we would all be in a much worse situation than we are in. Like, I'm brown as shit. If a system was like, let's punish him for being brown, I would be in a much worse position.
But if you go back to the founding of this country, that's how it was. And so it's taken people fighting against that and breaking that down.
So,
but
you're saying they didn't do that. You're saying they failed.
No, I'm saying elements of it still persist, which is a reality. It's like just because the Civil Rights Act passed doesn't mean that we're done with racism. Just because they freed the slaves doesn't mean that we're done with racism or done with white supremacy. Just because
this gets into a different thing to me, though. It becomes about it becomes about money to me.
Yeah, but that's
racism
a big part
is
of
a
it.
tool to keep the money, keep the resources.
So what's your solution?
Hot dogs
On the grill. And some fireworks.
That's what I'm saying. That's the thing I'm talking about.
The thing is, again,
there's no way to fix this.
Again, it's you work. you live with intention, you live with acknowledgement, and you let that affect your daily decision making. Whether, again, I've said all the ways, I'm not saying we're going to tear down a system, or that I'm going to tear down a system, or that it's going to be accomplished within my lifetime, but you can donate to causes, you can volunteer to causes, you can go to protests, you can raise awareness on things.
But that's what I'm saying. That's what I don't understand. If those people are holding all the keys and there's no way in, what's the point of even doing that?
A lot of those keys and so the keys and doors metaphor. Let's just like hyper focus that on judges right now. We've all been real chill and lax and not focusing on the levers of the actual system of the machine. And the people that got in place are the ones that were obsessed with it, and the people that wanted all that back, and they kept putting all those judges in place.
Right.
So when they start changing things, even too drastically, even illegally, they could skirt past it. And because we've been too chill, because we haven't been vigilant and comfortable, a lot of those doors and levers have been taken. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying they're all completely gone.
No, I understand. I'm saying, what's the 500-year plan? If it's not going to be done in our lifetime, like 500 years, how do we get to the utopia that we want?
I think that is too broad of a
100 years?
This goes back to
me, it sounds like there's no solution. We just are saying it's wrong. We know it's wrong. We all get it's wrong. But there's no actual solution for it.
I think for us, so if we look at history and what we would call progress, right? Social progress. We started down here, and over time we go up. Sometimes we dip, we go up. This is what I was talking about before when I talk about how progress isn't linear. It moves a lot, right? But if we zoom out on that, it's going to look linear because there's an upward trend.
I understand.
The idea would be for it to, at a certain point, be parabolic, where the rate of progress is faster than the length of time.
Right.
Because right now, it's hard to even say what that would look like just on a human history scale.
I mean, we have that. In the last 100 years, things have moved way faster than they have in the last 1,000 years.
Yeah, we can say that. But again, there's still things that we're facing, and it's ultimately the thing is that to not ask what is the end result. It's how do we improve where we're at now, because down the line, history is the generations after us are going to decide what needs to be improved on for them.
Now it sounds like we're kind of saying the similar thing.
We are saying a similar thing.
Yeah.
What I'm talking about though is you don't fight for a final result. You fight for the overarching progress, and you live with intention. And so you're saying, like, ultimately we do agree on what we're saying of work for your community, support your friends, support your family, do what you can. Right. But there's just a little bit step further of two things that I believe in is you can stretch your community a little bit further to people that you don't know.
That's true.
You know.
But that's only something we're afforded now.
True.
Like the internet or whatever.
Yeah. You're not wrong, but
it's all the more reason to take advantage of it.
Exactly.
I understand.
And the other thing is, again, living with intention, making sure that when you go to a 4th of July barbecue, you know, that you have that in mind. This might not be sufficient for some people. I know that there are people that are a little bit more steadfast or hardcore in their beliefs, and this might sound like a soft stance. But from a spiritual point of view, I believe, you know, you live with intention. So when you go to a 4th of July celebration, or when you are proud of being an American, you know, you take in the history of how am I afforded the life that I have now? The people that really fought for my freedoms, not fucking George Washington, you know, and Thomas Jefferson. But, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, all of the Chicano rights movements, Marsha P. Johnson, Huey Newton, like those are people that were out there fighting for people like us, and that really afforded us not just political rights in this country, but human rights, and for us to be able to have freedom of thought.
What's that term? A rising tide raises all boats, or what? All ships, or whatever.
It's true.
You
Right.
lift the floor, then it helps everyone.
Yeah, and I think you have to acknowledge. You also have to acknowledge where our government participates in, the oppression of not just within our own country, but out of this country.
Just to touch back on that thing you were just saying about history, I do feel that way, and I kind of extend that to the founding fathers. Like, even though historically they did bad things, like they were still just trying to make decisions that they thought were right for their community, even though they were hurting other people and they're pieces of shit. If it wasn't for them doing those things, we wouldn't even be able to be. That's that thing. If it wasn't for them, you wouldn't be here right now, and we wouldn't. We wouldn't be speaking this language. We wouldn't be doing the things we're doing.
I think there's a truth to that, but it also
A
gets
little bit
into
of a butterfly effect.
That's the problem with it's a
Yeah.
butterfly
Yeah.
effect.
I get it. They did bad things.
You
They
know,
did.
Ashton
They were bad
Kutcher could
people.
only make so
but I
many-
think they were stupid. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I mean,
I would never.
I'm not gonna thank them for putting chains on my neck.
I'm
you know
not
what I
thanking
mean?
them for that. I'm thankful that I'm here, and I can acknowledge that bad things led to me being here.
Yeah, I mean, but that is true. You are who you are today because of
Bad
what's
people.
come before you. No, I mean,
Get it.
what's complicated about that is that to a degree, that's a little bit more philosophical. Like, from that standpoint, if you really were to open it, that to a degree, some form of that circumstance would happen regardless. Like, if we say that, we can also say if they didn't show up here at all, we don't know what the civilization would have been, what we would have been or not been.
No, I understand what you're saying, but this wouldn't have been. We wouldn't be speaking the
This
language.
specifically, no,
Yeah.
but something would have.
But I'm glad that this specifically is happening. I'm glad you guys are here. I'm glad we could talk about this.
I think that's what's complicated about it. Like because it's like you still feel both, right? Like, or I feel
100%.
both.
I understand completely.
Like, I don't
That's what I'm
want to.
saying.
You're right. I don't want to know a version of life without you guys now. Cool. It's true, but that doesn't erase all the other stuff.
Yeah, my parents used to hit me. I think it gives me a better perspective on certain things.
Yeah, I think it made you cooler,
I don't think so.
but I get that.
Hell yeah.
But I just
Sorry.
I just get frustrated when the average like white dude kind of wants you to ignore that.
I get what you're saying.
I mean, ultimately, I hear what you're saying, but I just fundamentally disagree with it.
I get it. All I'm saying is that when Mexicans overtake white people soon, we better not be racist to them.
I mean, that's a real thing.
It's gonna happen.
In the pedagogy of the oppressed, that's like one of the first things that you learn in that book. And it's a pretentious book, and it's meant for academics, and it's not very accessible for the people
I think
at
it's
large.
a troll.
But listen, I still agree with the message of that section of when they talk about two things. One, the only people that can decide how to be liberated are the oppressed, not the oppressor. The oppressor can't say like, okay, these are the freedoms we're going to give you. It's the
I
people
understand.
that are being oppressed that are
Yeah.
the ones to say like, this is what we're going to have.
Okay.
I think
On top of that,
yeah.
the second thing is that the oppressed people have to be cautious to not become the oppressors
Mm-hmm.
when they are liberated, and that's a big problem that we see
Over and over and over,
over and
again.
over. Yeah, no,
This
and
is
that's a very
humanity.
real thing, though.
Yeah.
It's like you have to. It's like
It's one of my favorite things from the movie Barbarella. She was in space, and the guy's like, "You got to go to Earth," and she's like, "Earth, the planet of revolutions," and I was like, "That's deep."
because it spins.
Yeah, revolves,
but
and we
That's
revolt.
yeah,
We're revolting.
It's just funny because that word has that in it. Like it happens over and over again, which honestly makes sense for a culture to improve on itself. Like it has to get rid of, it has to like become bad and kill off the bad, and it's like we're like fucking sourdough bread.
Everything's metaphorical and cyclical, right?
Did you just call me a starter?
That's funny.
This is getting a little bit too pretentious for me, even though I'm about to say it. But it's the idea that evolution is, you know, life is trying to figure out the best way to be, right? So from when we're single cell organisms to all of this, right? This is getting into
You're opening up huge doors.
but what I'm saying is, yes, I agree. Is like as a society, we're constantly trying to figure out how the best way to be is.
No, I reject that. I reject what you just said because I feel that way, and you are like, we're conscious though. We know better now. You can't have both. Either because nature is not forgiving. Nature's evil. Nature's bad. It hurts things. It kills things. Suns explode. Planets get sucked into fucking black holes. Everything dies. There's planets with no sun. The oceans freeze. Life ends. Things eat each other. One species is supreme. There's a food chain. You know what I mean? And that's nature. The thing you're talking about. That's because that's always the argument I make of being like, hey, evolution. We're all cells. But your argument against that for me, which has made me change the way I think about that, is that we're conscious beings now. We're not cavemen. We're not just acting on impulse. We're able to look at our actions and react and make corrections. So to me, that's not evolutionary, even though I guess it is.
I was going to say, there's still...
I'm arguing against myself.
Because there's whole studies about this concept, because you look at it as not a single organism, but...
ecosystem?
Yeah, the construct of that evolves, and evolution is still part of that. It's more of a thing of like, as long as we decide that this is how we exist, this is just the path we've chosen to evolve, but evolution is still part of that. Society evolves, people evolve with it, and it becomes less physical and more like, I don't know if esoteric's the right word, but like...
I hate that this is happening because this is what I agree with you. That's what I'm saying, is that it's kind of a dog-eat-dog world, and white dogs just ate all of the brown dogs first, and that's why we're mad. But you're saying... I feel like you were arguing that you're like, this is wrong. But I'm saying, like, this is nature. War is nature.
I think when I think about that, it's the idea is when we talk about what's morally right and wrong, yes, we can look at this and say this is morally wrong. But if we take a step outside of even that and say like this is nature, then we can say that this is unnecessary. There's enough food to go around. There's like when we look at things like war and conquering lands, right, and colonialism and empires, right, if you boil it down, it starts at tribes fighting each other for resources, and that grows into the much larger villages, towns, society, like all that stuff, right? It goes into countries, and then it becomes like
worlds.
Well, yeah.
Well,
we need more. You know, it's a competition for resources,
right?
And so I think we have the wherewithal to say like, hey, let's maintain our culture, let's maintain our traditions, and like let's maintain, you know, the histories that we have. But all of this extra bullshit, we don't need to be torturing people. We don't need to be fighting wars. We could all be working together.
What if one of our people's histories and traditions are wars and hurting people? Would you be willing to relinquish your traditions in order for them to relinquish theirs?
Let's look at the Mandalorians. I'm kidding.
I mean, it's tough. It's tough because it's when you're in it. It's like this makes sense, right? Because you were brought up that way.
Gang.
Yeah.
But I think the sports is part of that release. Like it's not as violent. Sports is literally part of a substitute for all that.
There's that, but what I so just real quick, sorry to like totally steamroll that, but okay, so you're saying if a culture
I could be literal if you want.
if a country's culture is war, you know, can you take that away from them, right? And so the way that you combat that, right?
It's funny.
Yeah, is what you were talking about, is being part of a community. And not try to overpower that, but like I said, it comes down to all of this is unnecessary. You can look at it and say this is morally wrong, which I believe that it is. But if it's a country's culture to live this way, then you need to take a step outside of that and say that this is unnecessary, right? And show them that like, hey, we could all live together. We don't need to be constantly warring. Your guys' lives are being lost. You're ending life in a totally unnecessary way.
I agree. And that's when you start. I like what you said, that we need to, like, the way to overpower that war thing is to make it a community. Like, if you are one, then you're not warring.
And some of those people, the
great.
reason they go back to war, like even our soldiers, the reason they go back is no one understands them. No, they have community with no one unless they go back into that.
Right.
Like I mean, maybe I'm derailing it too much, but there's that study on
Are you talking
rats.
about actual war?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, literally. It's just even our American soldiers. A lot of them, I'm not going to speak for all of them, but I've heard this sentiment that they feel like no one understands, and at a certain point, they're kind of institutionalized into the system of war.
For sure.
And the only community they have is people that understand that.
I get it. I think we were talking. I think we were using that
Metaphorically?
not metaphorically, but like
Sorry.
because we were talking about it in terms of like countries battling. How do I? Am I saying that right? Or were we on the same page?
I don't know.
Fuck.
Keep saying what you're saying. Though.
Oh, okay. Keep saying what you were saying.
Well, like the point of community and that people. There's that rat study where they put rats in a cage and they give it like liquid, like cocaine or something like that, and the rats would just keep going. Right? They're just in this cage licking on that cocaine water or whatever it was. But they did that same study, which for a long time wasn't elaborated upon, and I think it was the same study. They built like this whole like rat ecosystem with like tunnels and like.
Real quick, just to jump on that real quick, just to get a little bit more clarification for what the original study was.
Yeah.
Was they put like liquid cocaine in a feeder, and a rat had to push a button to get access to the feeder. And so, but every time it pushed the button, it would have to push the button one more time, the next time. And then what they found was that it didn't matter how many times the rat had to push the button, it would keep pushing it until the door opened. And so that was used to that was used to establish like how addictive cocaine was, how addictive crack was, and that was in turn used to fuel the war on drugs.
Which is so dumb because rats are white.
Stupid. But then there was a second study. Somebody did a follow-up study on this that Ricky's talking about.
Yeah, so they did. I think they had maybe the same exact mechanism or system, and that liquid cocaine or crack or whatever was so addictive. But to test it, they built like a community and a fun place for the rats to have fun and not feel like they're trapped in a cage.
Right.
Like they literally had parks and tunnels and grass and like maybe even like a swing set and wheels to run
They gave
on.
a bunch of stuff, like recreation stuff for the rats to live a happy life, to socialize with other rats.
They gave the rats
little
a
cafe.
higher
quality of life.
That was the thing, is a higher quality of life and a sense of community.
And
And when
this-
it had both of those things, well, I guess we're now
It
all
would
pitching in.
sometimes go to get the coke, but then it would go back to its life.
It
That's
happened
so funny.
substantially less.
They didn't get stuck in that loop.
It was more of
Yeah.
a social
There's
user.
like one rat that's like at the rat club, and he's like, "Hey, I got it if you need it."
And it was like, we're having fun. It's cool.
But that was
Yeah.
also used. They couldn't really do a study on it because you can't have a control. But what they found is a lot of people that get addicted to opiates, is that if they had a better life to come home to after like they had a traumatic accident happen that they ended up in the hospital and they had to take painkillers. If they had a happy life to come home to, they had a full like healthy recovery. But if they didn't, then they would get addicted to opiates.
Crazy. What a waste of money on a test. Something that you could just ask anybody that's addicted
Well,
to opiates.
It's not really
It's like, yeah, I got injured at work and then I got addicted and that was it.
That
I'm
propaganda worked. I thought like,
Yeah,
oh, it's
100%.
just so addictive. Like I didn't even think anything could pull you away from it
addicted. One hit. It's all
until
it
I
takes.
saw people go through it, and then the studies came out like, oh no, the better lives these people had, the less likely they got stuck in it.
And listen, I'm not a fucking psychologist. I'm not an anthropologist. I there's stuff that I'm speaking on that I'm probably misinformed. So hopefully I'm not giving like a gross interpretation of like human characteristics. Because I know there's things where it's like there's a theory that like people are psychotic because was necessary during human evolution in times where you needed people that wanted to kill people. Because those are the people that were going to win battles.
Right. I understand that. Okay. I was just about to ask what the connection was for the rats and the
Oh, that was
war
Ricky's thing.
conversation. Is America
Because
the cocaine or the rat?
Basically the point is that the lack of community fuels all these dysfunctions.
Right.
All of the dysfunctions.
That's what I wanted
every
to-
single thing.
Got it.
You're right in that we should help each other and give what we can, and he's right in that maybe we can widen that bigger. Like I think you're both right, but when these systems
We're all
systematically reduce resources for communities,
My
and-
train's here.
reduce resources
You
for
going to
communities.
Hogwarts?
It's my train of thought. I found it.
Nice.
I didn't like it.
This is all point that it's all tied to community and belonging and having a sense of meaning and purpose with people. And the more these systems and these choices that this country, not just this country, any country makes that erodes communities, sometimes a lot of times intentionally, the more likely these dysfunctions will occur. I'm not saying
That's what. No.
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying, and that's why I liked what he was saying about joining forces. That's what you're talking about. That's in my dream world. That's why I kind of like wash my hands of a lot of this stuff, which I guess I know I shouldn't, because it is important. But my own personal like inside my brain things of how I'm like, this is how everything should be. Obviously, like are so crazy to me that I'm like, well, no one agrees with anything I'm saying. That's what you've heard me all the time. I'll be like, I'm wrong about this. I'll be like, I'm wrong about this. I know it because that's what I'm saying. Everyone just needs to agree. But I think what you're talking about is something that I do think in the little guy in my head. He's like, one world government.
lizard people.
Yeah, that's how you stop racism. You have
And
the United States of the world.
And you know one thing lizards are weak against? Firecrackers.
You ever put an M80 in a bullfrog?
Gross.
Crazy. Poor little froggy.
That was something I thought of when we were talking about. You were talking about like nature and hierarchy, and it was like, yeah, but nature also just like shifts. Like, what are now pets and terrariums used to be the dominant species of the planet.
Yeah, but that's through what he's saying, through us manipulating nature and being like, this is ours now.
It's not
we
even
put you in
just-
cage.
Sorry.
We're against that, right?
It's not even just us manipulating nature. Like there was a study where like there was an maybe I'm parroting this too much from people I've already talked about too much, but there's a baboon population. It was very aggressive and it would steal resources from other baboons. They were dominant, right?
Right.
And they would steal all the food before all this less conflict driven baboons would get less. And that's like the classic is like, well, yeah, winner takes all, right? Blah, 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 blah. That's what people espouse a lot. It's a very common, I'll say misconception for now. But what ended up happening, there was a large food source that they had access to. I forgot what it was, where all the dominant baboons ate it, were poisoned, and died. So a generation of the aggressive ones died out because of their aggressiveness. And then the generations after that were much more chill.
I get what you're saying.
And it's not us manipulating it. These are very weird, real, like, ebbs and flows of society.
I do think what you're saying is true. Like anything, it's pendulous.
Yes.
All radical ideas are going to kill themselves off eventually or swing back. But that doesn't make things sound nice to me.
No.
That sounds like we're not doing anything and things are just going to happen and we just got to.
And
that's when I turn back to what I'm saying. I'm like, dude, just be happy. Just do what you can around you because you can't control these large things. Like it's a pendulum. It's swinging. It's outside of you. Until we form a one world government where there's no more wars and everyone looks like me.
I agree with what you're saying. Bald?
Hairless, bald. Brown people, yeah.
I agree with
future.
I agree with what you're saying, but
what you
again,
want.
it just I don't.
Well,
It just is like you could extend that a little bit further is the thing, and you could live a little bit more conscientiously.
I do agree. I do think that's a good thing to do. But also, I do get in a thing where I'm like, hey, dude, go. They need people.
That's very true.
Go.
No, that is true. I mean, there's a lot, but that's the thing too. Is like, even saying this, there is a lot more that people can do, and it's, it's hard when you live in a capitalist society. But I do think that some people use that as an excuse to not contribute in meaningful ways or in more meaningful ways.
Yeah.
Where they're like, well, I gotta, because that's the thing is the reality is like you have to be able to have your head over water too. Like, I don't like speaking in metaphors, but you got to make sure you're taken care of, like that you have stability, But that goes into fucking Jesus parables, right? Like the woman that gave all 2 pence or whatever gave more than the.
Mm-hmm.
that's confusing.
Well, it just is like there are people that are less fortunate, I'll say, than me that are heavy on the streets, that are like swaying a lot more political power, like or that are protesting or that are volunteering and stuff. So
I agree with what you're saying, and again, I think we're saying we're kind of on the same. We're in the same book at least. Maybe not on the same page, but we're in the same book. I do think that it's important for humans to remember that we're all on one team, and I do think that would solve a lot of problems. I do think that stupid people forget that, and I think it's easy to forget that because companies, governments, and any body of anyone holding on to any ideology at all is going to pit you against other people that are holding on to their ideologies. And I think that goes for anything, even good things. Even good things can become bad, even if they have good intentions behind them. Like, even good movements can become bad. And we can see that. Like, it doesn't even take us getting into power. Like, I know plenty of people who even though they don't believe they're racist or prejudiced, I don't know the right word to use, but they do hate white people. You know what I mean? And I don't think that's a good foot to start on. Like, I understand how easy it is to hate white people. Believe me. I'm just joking. But I do understand how easy it is to slip into ideology and to slip into us versus them mentality on things. That's the whole trick corporations and governments try and get you to fall into, because they make a lot of money off of the us versus them thing. You know what I mean?
yeah, are you done?
I can be.
I agree with that, because even though, listen, this is a weird way to end my thoughts on this, but if I can take a second to compare things, is when we were on Isima, we had a conversation about this, and my stance on that show tended to be a lot of like anti-white, and like it was an easy stance for me to take of like fuck white people, all this bullshit. Even though I still have some elements of those beliefs, it's not rooted in fuck white people. I've had to change my thoughts on it to fuck white supremacy, and make that very clear distinction. But you still hold white people accountable for enacting, white supremacist beliefs. But I do agree with what you're saying, because and the thing is like a lot of people that are leftist, further left or whatever than me, disagree with me because they're straight up like fuck white people. But I have a strong belief in you have to allow, if you want people to improve, you have to allow them the room to do so.
For sure.
And that's where we talk about, the pedagogy of the oppressed, about not becoming the oppressor.
Right.
So you can't hold liberation against somebody when you achieve it, right? You can't do it in vengeance, even though you want to, because someone's standing on your neck for so long. When you get up, you want to fight back.
Of course. It's hard to not.
It's hard to not do that.
That's the whole message of Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior. No, roll credits. Yeah.
But that's what I was going to say, is the two things that I ultimately believe are: one, help others, and two, allow. I can't wrap it up in a. One is to help others. Two is, if you want progress to be had, you have to allow for progress to be made.
Mm-hmm.
Progress requires grace.
That's a great way to put it. Progress does require a lot of grace. You have to let the people in on that. That doesn't mean you don't hold people accountable, and that the people that were in the oppressor position, that they shouldn't operate with care and understanding.
For sure. I do think it's important to hold individuals accountable.
Mm-hmm.
I do also think that hatred for white supremacy you should hate white supremacy, but also shift that hatred for white people to systems.
Yeah.
The systems are the bad thing. You know what I mean? Those white people, it's like one of those things, like absolute power corrupts absolutely. Mm-hmm. Like when you're in a position of benefit, you're not going to make decisions that don't benefit you.
Have you been to...
I've been 3.
Joke thief. Have you been to like small parts of the country where it's like just white people? But like specifically small parts, not like predominantly white cities, but like small towns.
Like Rhode Island.
Yes, I have.
So
Terrified out of my mind.
In my experience, when you go to a small town in the Midwest or in the South, or you're at a gas station and like
in Clovis, Texas.
Yeah, all eyes are on you, and it's a weird line between, are they looking at me because they're racist, or are they looking at me because
I'm using the white only bathroom?
The sign is still up.
Yeah.
But you go to some towns and it's like there's just white people around.
Yeah, 100%.
There's nobody else.
No,
so
I've
it's like
that for sure.
Even if they're not like expressly racist, or if they don't think like, you're just like an other to them, and they're more curious than they are like upset, like, or suspicious of you, but you still feel that. So that to say, at a certain point, how do I say this? You don't let them off the hook, but you almost can't blame them. Yeah. Because they literally don't know any other way.
That's my whole thing. It's all about access to information. Mm-hmm. That's why I call them stupid. That's why I call racist people stupid, because
we say uneducated.
Okay, my bad. That's why I call them uneducated. That's why I think they have no intelligence in their heads.
That's why I call them dumbadoos.
Okay, I'm so sorry.
You really expanded and made
so funny.
The same point.
But no. But what I'm saying is that it's all about information. Like the more you learn, the less you hate other people. You start realizing. There before the grace of God goes I.
Yeah. I was talking to my friend that just got their master's degree, and they're a preschool teacher, and they're talking about how how preschool public education is so underfunded, and how education is undervalued in this country. And I said something like, it's wild to me, because even if you look at it from an economic point of view, higher education rates are better for the economy. And they were like, well, an oppressive power is not going to give education to its population because that's how you overthrow a government.
I think this is an important conversation, and we should probably do a whole. I could talk about this. We should do a future episode on this. I would like to talk about it because I have conflicting ideas about it. Because on one side, I'm like, yeah, obviously we should be investing more into education because education leads to opportunities, and it leads to better things. Obviously,
Right.
But that money is only going to come from the government. And I don't believe in letting the government control our levels of intelligence. So I'm like, we need to figure out some way to help ourselves get more education. My whole thing is getting away from the government. I'm trying not to go to the government with my problems. When you come to me for something, I want to help you. I don't want to be like, let's go to the board for this. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, we need to. That's how the government got its power, because we were trying to relinquish responsibilities and offload certain things for, and I think it's good sometimes, and other times I don't. I think we need to take a little more responsibility.
I think there's truth in both, right? Like we shouldn't entrust everything with them, but not everyone's so fortunate to have access to any of those resources, like even the resources we might try to offer.
For sure.
And lifting the floor ideally should be easier. And one of the easiest ways is through government.
Yeah, exactly. But is easiest best.
It should never be the only solution.
That's why I say I have conflicting ideas on it, because like I can't decide which one's better. You know what I mean?
Well,
yeah. It's a future episode for sure.
It's a future episode.
It's a whole different conversation.
yeah, I mean, again, I think it's good that we kind of agree on a lot of things, and ultimately, I think we want a better society.
Yeah. And I think our key takeaways here are systems that oppress people are bad. We need to figure out ways to come up with systems that don't oppress people, which I guess is hard.
It's a hard
been
thing to do.
For
I mean, it's human.
Hundreds of thousands of years.
We're the ones that are going to figure it out.
Someone's got to take an L. Maybe we can figure that out, dude. Maybe we could be like, we'll take turns.
Yeah.
Here's what we'll do.
Kill people.
Every person gets one vote.
That's funny.
We nominate somebody to represent.
We just start it over.
I think this time it's gonna.
Well, there's more Europeans. How are we going to account for that? Well, we'll just make them less of a.
Don't.
No, we're not gonna. We can't do that. That's what I'm saying. It just starts over. Over.
They get.
No, I think that we're saying the same thing, and I think we're on the same page. Be good to people. That's the thing. Act when you. It's so hard because we're speaking in ideal generalizations, and then these are like huge bureaucratic processes that take place, But just be good to the people around you, man. That's all I'm saying, dude. It's Freedom Day, dude.
Damn.
Use your freedom to fucking love each other.
We got Big Lebowski in the studio.
Lebowski.
Wow.
At the end of the episode, Ryan.
Come on, man.
Do you have a question for the audience?
Yes.
What did you do for the 4th of July?
I know that we usually like these to be quick enough, but I honestly think it's a good question. How do you acknowledge the 4th? What do you acknowledge about it? And if you are on the side that celebrates it, how? If you're not, because the reason that I ask this is because for the people that don't, there are other activities that they can recommend for people that are trying to look for that as well. There's, I recently found out that in some communities, like reservations will host, like not seminars, but they'll explore and talk about the day and stuff like that.
Yeah.
They also do that on Thanksgiving.
Also, we don't get a lot of days off in this country, and sometimes it's okay to just have a hot dog with the boys.
Fair.
That's what I'm saying. We could just,
What?
as a whole,
Hot dog with the boys.
Hot dog with the boys' day.
hot dog. We could just, as a whole, just redefine what our holidays and what are just like recognized days off.
Honestly, yeah. I call it whatever you want. You know what I mean?
I'm getting that dog in me.
Getting that dog.
I got that dog in me.
Oh, that's so funny.
And from us,
All right, gang.
Yeah.
We're out of here.
Ayun,
Thanks for
Poquito.
hanging out.
Don't
Don't fly.